Hello friends, and welcome back to Abridged by Alpal. So this video is going to come to you in it's not going to come to you in two parts. It's going to be filmed in two parts. We're doing another Frankenbook. Oh, I know, it went so great the first time. The reason why it's going to come in two different sections is because I'm going to roll spin for all the elements today, sit on it for a little bit, write a story, and then read you guys the story after, so it's a little bit less chaotic than it was last time. The theme, so to speak, for the last Frankenbook was pulling elements from my favorite series and books. The theme for this one is going to be pulling elements from sci-fi. My job today is pretty short and sweet, so don't expect to see this pretty face for very long. Before I actually start pulling the elements, I want to tell you guys which series I'm pulling them from. So first we have Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Then we have Red Rising by Pierce Brown. After that, we've got Dune by Frank Herbert. Next is Murderbot by Martha Wells. Then Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So excited. I'm filming this before seeing the movie. I'm so excited to go see it. I've heard really good things, and I did let my hopes get really high. So we'll see how that pans out. Anyway, and lastly, The Hierarchy, The Will of the Many by James Islington. I actually don't know how to pronounce his last name. Okay, first up for main characters, we've got Ender, Darrow, Paul, Murderbot, Ryland, and Viz. Oh, okay, last second it landed on Darrow. Okay, next up we have our love interests / good pals, because not all of these characters are romantically interested or mature enough. The characters that we have for this are Petra, not really romantic, the closest I think that Ender gets to a romantic one, but mostly just a good pal. Ao and Mustang from Red Rising, Chani and Princess Irulan from Dune. And this is where it starts to get a little bit weird. We've got Dr. Mensa from Murderbot, and Rocky from Project Hail Mary. Yes, neither one of those is like a romantic interest. Those are good pals for sure. And lastly, Emisa from The Hierarchy. Okay, let's get our love interest / good pal, depending on who it lands on. It was like this close to landing on Rocky, but instead it landed on Emisa. So that's gonna be interesting. Although Darrow and Emisa, I don't know that I don't see it, but it's also not immediately obvious. Next, we need our side characters, and I am going to pull 2 or 3 of these names again. We'll see what the vibes are after the first 2 before I decide if I'm going to pull a third one. The options that we have are Bean, Ally, and Valentine from Ender's Game. Then we have Cassius, Roke, Severo, and Victra from Red Rising. Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck, also on this list, are just characters that you have to say their first and last name. And Stilgar, all from Dune. Then we've got Pinley, Gurathin, Rati from Murderbot. Then only one side character from Project Hail Mary, because if you know, you know. Just Eva Strat. And lastly, from the Hierarchy, Equa, Calidus, Ulquiskor, and Lannistia. Oh, that's so fun. Our first side character we've got is Gurney Halleck. Okay, next one. Oh, okay. Next we've got, it was almost Valentine, but instead we landed on Ally. And we will do one more because that's not nearly enough chaos. Oh my gosh. So it landed on Duncan, Idaho, but I feel like with Gurney Halleck already in there, I don't really want to do that. The one right next to it that I thought it was going to land on is Victra. So I'm going to put Victra in there because she's definitely going to add the chaos that we need. Our next category is a little more loosey-goosey. It's like the villains, the big bad, the antagonists, basically just whatever is causing a problem for our main character. Our options are the Buggers from Ender's Game, the Sovereign / the Hierarchy from Red Rising, the Harkonnens from Dune, the Company from Murderbot, and just the Company TM, Astrophage from Project Hail Mary, and the Concurrence from the Hierarchy. And our big bad. I actually, this story is going to be really fun. Our big bad is the company from Murderbot, so corporate greed. If anything, this is just like reaffirming the mistakes I made on the last one to me, because tell me why I was pulling from such vastly different books and why I was trying to come up with it on the spot. That was crazy. At least now, like, the characters almost make sense together just because most of them, you know, are living in space or on another planet for a good chunk of their life, or their story that we see in their books. Almost done. We've got our setting. So we've got Earth, just Earth. It actually, you know, pops up in more than just one of these series, so that's kind of fun. Mars from Red Rising, Arrakis from Dune, the Corporate Rim from Murderbot, the Hail Mary itself from Project Hail Mary, and the Katenin Republic from the Hierarchy. I don't know if the Hierarchy really is sci-fi. It just like really reads as sci-fi to me. Okay, our setting is the Corporate Rim. Okay, so that kind of makes sense with the company. I mean, I could have made it work if we got a different setting or a different villain, but those two together I feel like is going to simplify a lot of things for me. Okay, the last element that we are going to spin for is our super tech. I've tried to isolate something unique in each series that kind of gives it its own flavor, and here they are. We've got, is it the Ansible, or is it Ansibles plural? Let me look. Ansible, Ender's Game. Okay, the Ansible, which is the faster than light communication device from Ender's Game. Then we have Razors from Red Rising. Next is the Governor module from, oh my gosh, Murderbot. Although I am a little bit tempted to also do the media, and literally just like the media, like it's not ports, what's it called, from Murderbot as well. I'm gonna add that in just for kicks and giggles right now. And if it lands on media, I'll know what I'm talking about. Governor module / media and media from Murderbot. Zenonite from Project Hail Mary, Spice from Dune, and Seeding from the Hierarchy. This is our last element. After this, we will know everything that's going to go in our story and kind of know the direction that it's going to go in and the task I have set out for myself to write. And our super tech is... All right, we've got the Ansible from Ender's Game. So just to recap all of the elements that we've just pulled, our main character is Darrow. His love interest is Amisa. Our side characters, our supporting cast, is Gurney Halleck, Alive, and Victra from Red Rising. Our setting is the Corporate Rim, and our villain is also the company. So that's nice. And lastly, our super tech is the Ansible, faster than light communication. And I don't know if anyone else is as fascinated by faster than light travel and communication as I am, but this is gonna be, it's gonna be good. But I will see you guys after I've written this and tell you what I've got. Hello again, friends. I'll be honest with you, it's been a lot more than just a couple days. I got these elements and was like, yeah, I can just pound out a short story really fast. Took me like a week and a half. And not because it's good, but because I haven't written creatively since I was in high school, and I guess I just didn't realize that fact when I was like, oh yeah, writing this little story will be so much fun. Then I sat down and I stared at my laptop screen and I was like, what have I signed myself up for? But I got it done. I also realized when I was almost finished with the story that what would have been a lot easier was just making the outline like I did for my first step anyway, and then like told the story just using the outline as like my guide as to like what was going on and what points I needed to hit. It would have been somewhere in between what I did for this video, which was write it out word for word, and what I did for the first Frankenbook video. It's a mess. Anyway, we'll see if you guys like it. I hope you guys are really ready for some bad fanfic. Here we go. Sometimes on especially slow shifts, Darrow got the sense he was never meant to be a crony for the company. He felt he had a more disruptive fate, but here he found himself poking around the WEO list for an expedition set to leave in 2 cycles. Did these clients really negotiate us into including 600 dog treats? Darrow asked aloud. I didn't even know we carried those. I heard we had to order some specifically for this group, Victra replied, as she leaned over Darrow's workstation to look at the list herself. Why in the stars would the company do that? I'm not sure. Look, there's other weird items on the list, Victra pointed. What's an Ansible? I've never even heard of that before. Darrow looked at Victra and shrugged to indicate he, too, thought it was a made-up word. They took a few more moments to highlight other curious items, such as a wheelbarrow. Are they gardening? I thought this planet was covered in water. 1 quart of orbits, and 5 large nightgowns of varying style and color. Either these are the most particular clients in the universe, or our systems were hacked, Victor mumbled, but I've never seen the company agree to so many personal requests, so I'm leaning towards the latter. Darrow had to agree. I haven't seen any of these items come into our inventory, which is weird because they leave so soon. Well, is it a last-minute contract? Maybe they were lenient because they paid through the wazoo for rush fees. No, it says the contract was finalized 7 months ago, to which Victor just huffed. The pair, baffled into silence, stared at each other for a beat or two. Well, Victor raised her hands and dropped them back into her lap. I guess, is it time to go check with Halleck? Victor suggested. Darrow nodded his agreement but added, this is my list. You don't have to come. Ha! As if I have anything better to do. The two old friends made their way to the office of their supervisor, Gurney Halleck. He was known to be gruff, so they tried to avoid bothering him as often as possible, and to sing his instructions when he thought his subordinates might not be listening, so they really tried to avoid bothering him as often as possible. Dreading what he knew to be an interaction he'd have to recount with Victor to several later, Darrow hesitantly knocked on the door. Enter, came the gravelly reply. Inside, Halleck was sitting idly on a chair, drumming his fingers to a rhythm only he seemed to know. Victor and Darrow paused a moment in the doorframe, expecting something further from the man, but he simply raised an eyebrow as to suggest, well, I don't have all day. Which, by the way, they both knew was a lie. Hey boss, I was doing the final check on this WEO that leaves soon, and there are some odd items on it. Darrow ended the sentence in more of a question than a statement. He passed the highlighted list over to his supervisor. Also, a lot of these weird requests haven't even come in yet, which goes against standard protocol to fulfill unique items first. I know procedure, boy, Halleck growled as he scanned the list. For a moment, just a moment, his eyes seemed to fill with surprise. But as he neared the bottom of the page, his face settled back into a scowl. A contract, he emphasized by putting a finger on the paper after setting it down on the desk. Is a contract, he slid the list back to Darrow. So you do know what an Ansible is, Victor chimed in from slightly behind her friend. I know it's on the list, and I know that most shipment delays are caused by pals who talk too much. Gurney saying the last few words in a dark timbre, once again to an unrecognizable cadence. Victor, recognizing the warning for what it was, started pulling the back of Darrow's jumpsuit toward the door. Undaunted, Darrow continued on. That's not helpful, he scoffed. We have no idea where Prelim sourced them from, or even if they sourced them. And if the clients can't leave, then I guess they won't be going anywhere, Halleck hummed in an even more sinister tone. Darrow stood there for a heartbeat, stunned. That wasn't normal. The company didn't just allow delays to happen. Delays cost money. They cost reputation. They cost far too much to let something like this slip through the cracks. They could cost Darrow his job. Victra started tugging on Darrow to escape more insistently. Do your job, were Halleck's parting words as the two finally, and much to Victra's relief, left the scene. Oh my gosh, you guys, we barely gotten started. Half an hour later, Darrow and Victra were still sitting around his desk, whispering in hushed tones. I mean, it was just so weird, Victra repeated for the fourth time. He knew something. I mean, he recognized something on the list and then tried to play it nonchalant. I know, Darrow acknowledged. You said you've heard of intentionally sabotaged contracts before. Do you really think that's what this is? And why so many odd requests? Why not just one item that can never be fulfilled? Come on, man, she said. That would be way too obvious. Better to make it seem like they were trying to be too accommodating and the client took advantage of that, and that's why the team is trapped station-side. Have you ever heard of someone working around it? No, Victor paused. It usually falls apart when the client insists on something they were promised and realizes it's not possible, but they can't back out of the agreed upon terms anymore. Darrow thought for a moment more. So we can't just paint a box and call it an Ansible, right? Victor nodded. I guess the only thing is to talk to the client next. Figure out what they were promised exactly, not this bare-bones catalog. Not even halfway. What did I get myself into? The pair made their way through the station to the address listed on the client file. Whether or not they were supposed to have access to that was beside the point, and they could always argue they were simply trying to go above and beyond. The company loved when employees went above and beyond because they weren't contractually obligated to compensate for the extra work. It was a known loophole in the lower circles to get out of trouble. As they neared their destination, they came into a sector bustling with humanity. It seemed people of every profession were employed within a block radius of where the team's headquarters were. At the front door of the building they were headed to, a dog lounged over a metal grate, blasting cold recycled air. At least we know who the dog treats were for, Victor quipped. He must be an especially good boy for the clients to not question why their dog was getting such VIP treatment. People always want to think that their dog is the best. Darrow just looked at her quizzically, mid-stride, as if saying, "That's what you're thinking about right now?" Victor shrugged back and mumbled something about no sense of humor. Inside, there was more chaos than expected. Someone was arguing about ration allocations, someone else was laughing. The dog barked, loud, insistent, probably offended that he hadn't been given a scritch on their way in. Every step they took brought a little more silence until everyone inside was staring at the two employees. That tended to be the reaction to corporate agents sticking their noses in places they weren't wanted. "Which one of you is in charge?" Victor asked. A woman stepped forward, narrowing her eyes. "That depends," she said. "Are you here to help us or delay us?" Darrow momentarily glitched. The one who had spoken was striking. She gave off the sense she had never doubted herself a day in her life. "Help," he managed. Victor shot him an odd glance. "Bold claim," the woman said. "I'm Amisa." She warily extended a hand towards Darrow. To his credit, he snapped back into the moment and took the hand confidently. "Darrow," he replied, "and this is my colleague Victra. We're with contract fulfillment for your upcoming excursion and need to talk with someone about a few hiccups we've run into." "I've never known the company to have issues with fulfillment," a man replied, moving closer to Amisa. His posture indicated curiosity rather than protectiveness. "A lie," he said. "That's what makes it so odd," Victor observed. "What led us to this in-person checkup? It's not exactly standard procedure." "Okay, let's hear it then." Amisa braced herself, clearly expecting bad news. "The issue," Darrow stated, "is that some of your requested items don't exist in our system." Amisa raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a you problem." "It becomes a you problem," Victor cut in, "when you're not allowed to leave until every item is fulfilled." That landed with the two Voyagers. "What?" Amisa spat. "No, I'm not playing this game. We leave in 2 days. If you don't fulfill our contract, then can't you owe us some sort of refund or upgrade other parts of our package?" "We could," Victor continued, "if you had negotiated a fallback policy." "The contract is very clear," Darrow said, pulling up the clause and projecting it. "Departure contingent on full delivery. No additional instructions." "That's ridiculous." "Agreed, though that's not really solvable at this point." Eli groaned, turning away and putting his hands over his face. Amisa started pacing. Darrow and Victra stood there in silence for a few moments while the other two processed. "All right," Amisa sighed. "What are the problem items?" "Not many, really. 5 very stylish nightgowns and something called an ansible." He ended the statement in a tone that revealed he had no idea what said item might be. "We were hoping you might shed further light on what exactly was promised to you when the contract was negotiated. Then maybe we can find something that fits that definition." "I told you those don't exist," Eli muttered to Amisa. "Our rep said it was a faster-than-light communication device," she added. Victor swore and copied Eli's post from a few moments before. "And you believed them," Darrow said disbelievingly. "I mean, technology develops every day. It seemed plausible." The group as a whole took a beat to realize how deep the hole was that they all found themselves in. "Well, let's get to it, I guess," Amisa interrupted the tension. Victor snorted and shook her head. Darrow blinked. "That's not exactly how this works." "That's exactly how this works. You can't just—" "I can and I will," Amisa said, already grabbing a jacket. "If the company wants to play games, we'll play better." Darrow felt a spike of panic. If she found it, if she fulfilled the contract herself, he was absolutely losing his job. Also, he didn't want this to be the last time he saw her. It wasn't often he found someone full of such confidence. Deserved or not. "I'm coming with you," he said. Amisa paused, turning just enough to look at him over her shoulder. "Why?" Darrow's reply was already coming out of his mouth. "Because if you get it without company authorization, it doesn't count as fulfillment." Victor gave him a look that said, "Oh, really? And you don't know the supplier market, the maybe less than legal ways to obtain what you need." At this, he did pause, assuming you're ready to do whatever it takes to get off the station. It really seems like you are. Not that the company is officially suggesting that. Amisa studied him for a moment. Fine," she said over her shoulder, already stepping through the doorway. And you, Victra," Darrow continued to improvise. "You and Eli should head out and see if you can locate the nightgowns." And with that, he followed Amisa out onto the street. As Darrow caught up with the small but surprisingly formidable explorer, he couldn't shake the feeling that something much bigger was happening. The company didn't make mistakes like this. Gurney didn't brush things off like that. If there was something stopping the expedition crew from shipping out, it had to be someone with an agenda. "So, where do we start?" Amisa questioned. Darrow instantly started racking his brain for an idea, any idea, that could lead them to their next step. "I know a place," he said with a snap of the fingers, and immediately regretted it. The only person who could build something like an ansible was also the last person anyone sane wanted to owe a favor, and definitely at least some part reptile. The lower market sectors of the station smelled like hot wiring, mildew, and choices people would later deny making. Amisa didn't hesitate once. Darrow, meanwhile, was trying very hard to look like a man who did not deeply regret blurting out, "I know a place." They stopped outside a narrow metal door squeezed between a pawn kiosk and a shop selling loose machine parts. A crooked little plaque read, "Dr. A. Vodum. Consultation by appointment only." Darrow sighed a little to himself and hit the buzzer. "I know for a fact I have no appointments right now," a female voice said through the door. "So unless you're willing to..." "Oh, it's you." Standing inside was a hunched yet still tall woman with brilliant green eyes, staring down on Darrow with disdain. "Hey, Dr. A." He made a weak attempt at levity. "I hope you came with my sling blade." The doctor deadpanned. "I came with an update on how the procurement of one..." "No sling blade," she cut him off. "And yet I foretell you're going to ask me for something anyway." "Well, maybe not something, but some information?" he asked sheepishly. "We're trying to locate some technology that may or may not exist yet." The tall woman rubbed at her eyes with hands that ended in claws rather than fingers, then waved the pair in. The doctor's quarters consisted mostly of a large, immaculately pristine lab. In one corner, a small, hard-looking bed and some bug snacks gave the only sign that someone might actually live here. "You're lucky I liked your mother," she grumbled. "What's this device you're looking for?" "An Ansible," Amisa chimed in. "A faster-than-light communication tool." The doctor barked a laugh. "Do you know the causality violations that would create?" she retorted. "Listen, I know it's not ideal," Darrow started. "Not ideal. But our contract says we were promised one." Amisa cut in, unfazed. "The company's trying to keep us from leaving the station. If there's even a prototype..." That got her attention. "A company rep promised one of mine in a client contract," Dr. Vodum asked slowly. A smile spread across the scientist's face. It was not reassuring. "Well," she said, "that is both impossible and extremely insulting." "So they do exist," Amisa said. "I did not say that. You heavily implied it." "But I didn't say it," Dr. Vodum retorted. "Anyway, were such an invention to exist, there are certain parts my lab is lacking." For the first time since picking up the We O list, Darrow was starting to feel some sort of hope. "Parts that can be supplied? If one were willing and able to act quickly and not get caught?" "Caught?" Amisa asked. Yes, there is a bit of a snafu going on in the Barduian clan. Something about not being able to get their hands on a sling blade." She looked at Darrow pointedly. "I can fix that." "Oh, really? I thought you had an update," the reptilian woman mocked. No, I can... Just give me an hour. Amisa, you're good to wait here, right? I'll be back. Don't go anywhere." An hour and a half later, Darrow came running up the alley to Dr. Vodum's office with a heavily padded duffel bag in tow. No one really paid him any mind, as this was not the oddest sight they had seen in even the last week. "I got it! Them! I got them!" he said as he punched the buzzer again. "I got them. One for you, good doctor." He handed the bemused scientist one just slightly rough-looking sling blade. "And another for the Barduians!" he exclaimed, as he laid out another on her table. The second was in much, much worse shape. "Will it work?" "Better question might be, does it work?" Dr. A said as she poked the weapon. "Yes, verified that before I came." "Then it should be fine. I've invited a guest over in the meantime, and should everything go smoothly, dear Misa might be on her way off of this stars-forsaken station shortly." Darrow let out an exhale of immense relief. After the Barduian had come and gone, and Dr. Vodum had acquired the last element needed for her prototype, and Amisa and Darrow had played no fewer than 4 agonizingly long games of Celestial Jerboa Bolt, Dr. Vodum emerged from the back of her lab with a small black suitcase and an even smaller, somehow blacker box. She left the latter of the two on a desk she passed and opened the former on the low table Amisa and Darrow had hurriedly cleared their last game off of. "Watch," she said as she tuned a few instruments inside the case, "and be amazed." As she hit the largest button, the small box immediately lit up on the other side of the room. "I'm confused," Darrow stated. "Faster than light!" the doctor exclaimed. She ran over to the device she had left behind and opened an unseen hatch. "About 2.6 attoseconds faster if you leave enough room for error." Darrow stood with his mouth agape. "I know, fascinating, isn't it? The trick is to limit it to a degree that cannot cause rips in temporal reality." "And how much room for error do you need on that?" Amisa asked with no small amount of snark in her voice. "While I don't appreciate your attitude, I'll have you know only 1 attosecond. Which means we can say that this device communicates faster than life, with a 95% probability of that being correct." You mean I ran across half the station and back, sold a sample of my DNA to Mateo, and waited 4 hours for 1.6 attoseconds. Probably more. And you know I would never advise selling yourself to Mateo. That is entirely on you. Dara looked over at Amisa with an expression of utter bafflement. She shrugged back at him as if to say, meets the requirements, does it not? He shook himself out of his stupor and gave a grunt of equal parts agreement and irritation. He collected the ansible back into the bag he had carried the sling blades in and bid the doctor adieu. Is there anything else I owe you for this? He asked with hesitation. Oh, no, the doctor replied. Just bring dear Misa back to visit when she returns station side. Darrow, skeptical of his luck to walk away at such low a price, shocked at the price he had paid for such a small return, and surprised at Amisa's ability to charm the eccentric doctor, a task which he had yet to accomplish, walked back out onto the street. It didn't save the last part of the story, and I really don't feel like writing it again. So let me just tell you what happens. They get back to not his office, but like his work, the fulfillment center, and they meet up with Eli and Victra, who have, been able to source 5 very stylish nightgowns, and they're all excited about the fact that they were able to actually get everything and that they're going to be able to go, pending that the dog treats do in fact show up the next day. But as they're celebrating, a sec unit shows up, and they're like, oh crap, like we're done for. We're done for. There's nothing we can do about this. The sec unit ends up being Murderbot, and he's like, listen, I just need to get out of this place. Like, you guys seem pretty reasonable. You know that the company does not want you to leave the station, and I can help make that happen. I just want you to take me with you. And they're like, wait, really? And he's like, yes, please. And then he tells them why the company didn't want them to leave, and it has to do with the planet that they're going to. Really similar to the first plot of Murderbot. And then yeah, that's it. Happily ever after. So there we go. There's the second Frankenbook, or Franken's short story, I guess. Honestly, I had a lot more fun recording this than I thought I was going to. I feel like if things don't work out for me, I should pursue a career as an audiobook narrator. And sorry for the lack of eye contact. I did not rehearse reading this out loud before, so I was just reading off my iPad the entire time. Thanks for listening to my funny little story, and I will see you guys next week. Bye! I spelled pals wrong. It's really embarrassing, actually. That's like a super easy word. You said you've heard of intentionally sabotage. Ugh. You said you've heard of intentionally sabotage. Holy crap. I'm doing good. Doing really good. You said you've heard of intentionally sabotage. I'm just now realizing that I referred to Eli by his name without having introduced him. Okay, I'll go back to this. Okay.